And welcome back. We are heading to Tobago now to discuss the political controversies over there. Joining us this morning is attorney at law Martin George. Mr. George, good morning.
Yeah, hi, good morning to you and good morning to your entire team at TV6 and good morning Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. George, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Well, startling revelations from the Chief Secretary last week implicating a number of persons in a plot to bring down his administration, including the Prime Minister, the Police Commissioner and the former Chief Secretary, with all of them denying wrongdoing. The Prime Minister is even promising to take legal action against the Chief Secretary. Mr. George, what say you about the political developments of the last week?
Well, you know, Marlon, they are very troubling indeed. And, you know, they actually have opened a can of worms because the Prime Minister in his response has now brought up the issue as to whether there is any possibility of the question of witness tampering. Because this person who Mr. Augustine portrayed in this video that was played in the Assembly Hall is someone who Mr. Augustine actually admitted on the Assembly floor that he taped this person without the person's knowledge or consent. So, you know, there are questions there on a separate issue, but, you know, the Prime Minister expanded it, you know, to ask as to whether it could be tantamount to witness tampering. Now, I mean, I don't know, and I mean, the police have not revealed whether this person has given a sworn statement to them in regard to any investigation in the Audiogate issue. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, it was a very curious development and a very unorthodox way to make one's case if it is that Mr. Augustine were doing this basically, I guess, in defense of himself and his administration. It is, you know, very, very unusual to use that type of methodology by playing a video. And, you know, you ask yourself, even the presiding officer, you know, whether she would have, you know, sanctioned this. Did she know fully of the contents of what was to be played? You know, did she see it before, hear it before, you know, before giving approval? So there are so many issues swirling around there. And then now you also had the broad sweeping allegations by Mr. Augustine, which seek to implicate the Commissioner of Police, you know, a senior counsel. So, you know, I mean, Mr. Augustine really has to come good with his evidence to back up these allegations if he is to be taken seriously. You know, so it's one thing to make the allegation and to make it under the cloak of parliamentary privilege and the cover of parliamentary privilege, which, just for the benefit of your audience, I will confirm that also extends to the Tobago House of Assembly. By Section 70 of the THA Act, they are also covered with the same immunities and privileges as the national parliament. So there's no issue or question there. But the fact remains that the public heard these allegations, and unless you can back it up, because I mean it's a serious allegation to implicate the Prime Minister, the, you know, entire TTPS or the Commissioner of Police, you know, and, you know, a former political leader and, you know, a senior counsel, in all of them has been part of this plot. So unless this, you know, this star witness has some really critical or crucial evidence that he can produce, which does not impugn or impinge upon the ongoing Audiogate investigation, I think Mr. Augustine is walking a very fine line in terms of his proof.
Yeah. And Mr. George, I want to ask this. We must go to a very short break, but I'm going to ask you, and you can think about it as we go to our break, because the conduct of the presiding officer is also being questioned, and now action is also being, well, the Prime Minister is also suggesting that action be taken against the presiding officer. We have about 30 seconds, Mr. George, if you can give me a comment on that. I have a minute.
Right.
1 minute.
So, and that yes. That's why I mentioned, because you see, the presiding officer is the one who is responsible for the proceedings that take place in the chamber in terms of what you allow and what you don't allow. So I don't know how much foreknowledge she had or how much interrogation she made of Mr. Augustine as to what is this material you intend to present. But if it is that it shows that there is now the possible conduct of a criminal offense, then maybe the presiding officer might have to explain, what role she had or did not have in the scenario.
Mr. George, how do we get to the bottom of this? Because even last week, during his presentation in the THA, Mr. Augustine questioned the, let's say, competence of the police service, the professionalism of the police service to investigate this matter, and he has even called for international help to probe this matter.
Well, I mean, the reality is that, if it is that you are the subject of a police investigation, or the police are investigating matters concerning or surrounding possible actions of yours, one does take with a huge dose of salt, any allegations you tend to make in terms of the conduct of the police ab initio, particularly without supporting evidence. So I'm not sure what supporting evidence Mr. Augustine has or wishes to present to back up his claim to say, well, look, the police are acting on the directive of the Prime Minister, or that the Prime Minister is using the TTPS to hunt down his political opponents. So I think that it really is something that at this point is just in the realm of allegation and is unsubstantiated. And I think we ought to await the TTPS for them to enlighten the nation as to what's the status of their investigation, what they have found out so far, and what steps they intend to take, I guess, in consultation with the DPP's office. I think it's all premature.
That suggestion that Mr. Augustine is making, that he wants international people to investigate this matter, is that an option?
It's a nice soundbite. That's all it is, because international bodies have absolutely no jurisdiction in terms of our local domestic criminal law. They have no say in terms of how we proceed with our matters or don't proceed. So, as I say, it's a nice sound bite, and it sounds like a cry for help, but in reality, there's no validity that any international body can give to, seeking to intervene in the process of our, rule of law and due process in our criminal proceedings.
How has this new controversy impacted Mr. Augustine? Has it helped his case?
Well, the thing is, it depends on whom you speak to, because there are some Tobagonians who they love the idea of positing this as an us versus them type of scenario. Tobago being in this constant war with Trinidad. They love that idea, and they love to portray themselves as the oppressed and the downtrodden, and that they've been advantaged by Trinidad for decades. So therefore they love to see somebody stand up and give the fight to Trinidad like this. So there are those who would applaud that. But then, of course, you have the more sober-minded, the more rational thinking individuals who will wonder, in terms of a long game, where is this going? In other words, this acrimonious relationship and this constant tension that you're creating with the central government, the same central government which has to give you the budgetary allocation every year. Is it really the best approach? Because the point is, we all know the saying that, you would catch more bees with honey than with vinegar. So therefore, you ask yourself, is this really, as a long game, the best approach to take to achieve the development of Tobago? While there's nothing wrong with standing up and fighting for the rights of Tobago and Tobagonians, there are ways you can do things. So in other words, you can actually make your point without becoming obnoxious and offensive in doing so. And what I always, deprecate and, I always deplore in our public officials is when they seek to denigrate other public offices and our institutions in Trinidad and Tobago. So, by the statements that Mr. Augustine made, it almost cast aspersions on the entire institution of the TTPS. It certainly cast in aspersions on the office of the Prime Minister, So, as I say, unless he has very cogent, clear, and compelling evidence, which he is going to produce at some point to back up those statements, then it just appears to be rather unfortunate that those things were said, if it is that you don't have the evidence to back it up.
Yeah, Mr. George, time is against us this morning. We only have about 1 minute again. But how is all of this going to end?
Well, the thing is, I think the police are the main actors in this because they do have an ongoing investigation into the AudioGate issue. So we may now have a VideoGate issue for them to look at also, because as I said, the Prime Minister has made his own assessment, although he did give the caveat to say that he's no lawyer, and that, of course, we know he isn't. Although he's surrounded by lawyers in his own household. But the fact of the matter is that he, for himself, is not the one to pronounce on it. And he has suggested that maybe this could be tantamount to witness tampering. I don't know, because, as I say, only the TTPS will be able to say whether this person is actually a witness for them, whether he has given a sworn witness statement, detailing evidence, and whether this, publication of it in the assembly by Mr. Augustine is possible of being capable of amounting to witness tampering. But as I say, the TTPS are the main actors who will really determine how this matter plays out, one way or the other, in either the AudioGate or now the VideoGate scenario.
A lot of gates to be opened there and a lot of gates to be investigated, Mr. George. As always, thank you very much for speaking with us.
We've had in the past email gate and several other of these gates.
Yeah, gates, a lot of gates. Thank you very much again, Mr. George.